The first game in a series that still gets games to this day, and for a period got a new release every year. But this is where the series started, a game on the PS3 and Xbox 360. This game was published by Ubisoft and made by Ubisoft Montreal. Ubisoft is a publisher that is constantly mocked and made fun of, but is a very influential company, especially once you understand that in the beginning of the company, it wasn't even a video game company. It was the Guillemot family business. Eventually, the 5 sons of the family would go to college and expand the family business to also sell CDs, computers, and software. By 1986, the company was making $5.6 million each year. Eventually, the brothers would take control of the company and change the name to Ubisoft. The most famous of those 5 brothers is Yves Guillemot. Most people know him as the guy that used his job to get sex and taking managers that committed sexual assault and just putting them in other departments. Not the best at his job, and that's kinda sad. His family started this company, and all of them have a connection to Ubisoft, and this is the legacy that Yves leaves behind. And what most people know him for is as the CEO of Ubisoft. It's a story that I can make another video about, but most of you know who Ubisoft is as a company. The first game they made was Zombie for the Amstrad CPC back in 1986. And I could list a bunch of other games that Ubisoft published, games like Rayman, the Tom Clancy games, 13. The list can go on and on with good and bad games. Ubisoft has made a lot of bad licensed games. Now on to Ubisoft Montreal. Started in 1997, and their headquarters are located in the Peck building. The studio was started because Montreal, Quebec, and Canada were looking to create new jobs in multimedia. The first games that the studio made were child-friendly games like Laura's Happy Adventures. But as time went on, the developers wanted to make their own games, and in 2002 they had their first breakthrough title, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. And in 2003, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Also in 2003, the idea for Assassin's Creed also came into existence for designer Patrice Désilets. As the next Prince of Persia game started development in 2004, Patrice thought about making it an open-world game, believing that it would be possible in the next generation of console hardware. During this time period, they also wanted to change the story and not have it being about a prince, but about a regular person that strives to be king. This is when the story of Hasan-i and the Order of Assassins was discovered, and the name Prince of Persia Assassin was given to the game. Vladimir Bartul's Alumet was a very big inspiration to the story, and as time went on, they developed a lead character of the game that was drawn by illustrator Kai Nguyen that drew him as a bird of prey. Eventually, the name Altair Ibn-La'Ahad was given to him, that translates to the bird, son of no one in English. Altair was changed as development went on, as they even took ideas from G.I. Joe character Storm Shadow to help finalize his design. The idea of the Apple of Eden was initially laughed at by everyone on the development team until they noticed that many leaders in royalty and medieval paintings were holding a globus cruciger, cross-bearing orb that showed power and control. Then they realized that it could be the Apple of Eden. It's also during this time period that they chose to focus on the assassins, because the original story had time travel where the player would go through time to see historic assassinations. One of these was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas. But Patrice had seen a program on DNA and human history. This is where the Animus comes into play. And believe it or not, the executives at Ubisoft were not big fans of the Animus. They thought that players would get confused and disappointed that it's not truly a medieval world experience. The 2006 E3 trailer doesn't help. As time went on, they made the sci-fi elements more prominent in the marketing of the game. The initial idea in designing the game was to build off elements in Prince of Persia. 20 employees started building a new engine for the game to run in, initially called the Scimitar. It is now called the Anvil next. They were trying to make animations look more natural, things like wall climbing. They also had to rebuild historical cities and structures and make sure all of them are climbable so that the player feels like they have as much control as possible. They also wanted to make sure that they could simulate large crowds, because with Prince of Persia on the PS2, they could only have 8 characters on screen at once or the game would crash. But on next-gen hardware, they were able to get 120 people on screen. That led them to building on the stealth ideas, leading to the idea that the player could mask themselves in the open. And after 2 years of pitching the game to Ubisoft, Jade Raymond was brought in to be producer. Over the next few years, Ubisoft wanted another Prince of Persia game where the prince is the main protagonist, and was not liking this new game. But at GDC 2006, the developers argued that this didn't have to be a Prince of Persia game and could be a new IP for the next generation of consoles. During this time period, the title was changed to Assassin's Creed and the prince was removed. The first Assassin's Creed came out November 13th, 2007 on the PS3, Xbox 360, and April 8th, 2008 on PC. Now, I know this is going to be hard for some of you to accept, but when this game came out, people actually really liked it. The animations were great, the attention to detail was just amazing. Like, most people talked about how bad the story and the repetitive nature of the game, along with the poor AI. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was released November 5th, 2007, and Assassin's Creed knocked it out of the #1 spot. This game set the base for the entire Assassin's Creed franchise. But without further ado, let's actually get into the review of the game. Now, you have to remember, 2007 was one of the best years in gaming history. There were a ton of classic, legendary games released in 2007. God of War 2, BioShock, Halo 3, The Orange Box, Super Mario Galaxy, Mass Effect, Uncharted. It was a great time. Not only were they trying to make games more fun, but they were also trying to make games look better. So visually, the game looks great. No one can argue against that. But visually, it didn't blow people away. Some people had problems with the glitches and the animus. So Ubisoft Montreal toned that down in later games. I do remember the first time that I rented this game from Blockbuster. I was really blown away that they rebuilt these ancient cities in a video game. All of these cities have their own look and feel. Damascus, Acre, Jerusalem. There's also the Assassin's headquarters in Masyaf. The visuals have aged pretty well, though one of the big problems that I have is the lack of color in this game. There's just this gray haze everywhere, sucking the color out of the game. I understand they're trying to make it feel dark, but you can do that in other ways. There are also a lot of jagged edges on things that should be round. The anti-aliasing wasn't that good, but it does have really good texture resolutions. But at a distance, especially now, you can see the low poly models that they have for things off in the distance. The game hasn't aged poorly, it just hasn't aged as well as some of the other games from 2007. Some of these games have aged really well, and some have aged like milk. The visuals show their age just a little bit at times, but the music is one of the most forgettable things about this game. I don't remember any of the music from this game. The soundtrack was done by Jesper Kyd, who has done good work, especially on the Assassin's Creed series. But I know none of the songs from this game. I forgot that Jesper Kyd even worked on this soundtrack. I don't remember anything from the soundtrack. But the voice acting is one of the things that you either like it or you hate it. There were a lot of voice actors in this game. A lot. The two biggest names are actress Kristen Bell, where they also used her likeness. This is back in the day when the biggest thing that she was in was Deadwood and Gracie's Choice. Shortly after this came out, she was in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. After that, she was in Fanboys, Couples Retreat, Burlesque, Frozen. The other actor, Nolan North, he voices Desmond Miles. And a lot of people don't like Desmond or Nolan's performance as Desmond. They tried for a while to get people to like Desmond, but no one ever did. To be honest, I never understood why. Like, what would you do? You ran away from home because you thought your parents were crazy. Now you're a prisoner because this crazy war is actually a real war that's been going on for centuries. What would you do? And most of the time Desmond is talking, it's the same voice Nolan uses for Nathan Drake. So if you don't like Desmond's voice or you think it's annoying, why don't you think Nathan's isn't? Nothing about it is great, but a lot of people act like it was so bad that they would rather rip out their eardrums than keep listening to the voice acting. I've heard worse voice acting in a lot of games that people praise. I think it's just the story that people don't like. So therefore they just say the voice acting is is bad, and that's not always the case. Most of the time, it's just that the writing is just that bad. That's actually a perfect transition to the next section of the review, the story. I am going to be honest. Some of you that played this game as a kid, if you didn't read the text in the game, then a lot of this will shock you. It's 2012, and bartender Desmond Miles wakes up in some type of machine. He's been kidnapped by Abstergo Industries, a pharmaceutical company, and has been taken to their global headquarters in Rome. Dr. Warren Vidic and Lucy Stillman are supervising Desmond, as he is forced to use the Animus, which takes genetic memories and plays them back in a simulated reality. Desmond is being forced to relive parts of his ancestor, Altair Ibn-La'Ahad, a senior member of the Assassin Brotherhood during the Third Crusade in 1191. Altair and his two brothers, Malik and Qadar al-Sayaf, are sent on a mission at Solomon's Temple to retrieve an artifact called the Apple of Eden. As they arrive, they discover that Knights Templar, the assassin's sworn enemies, are also there. Altair botches the mission, resulting in Qadar and Malik's death. But as Altair reports back to his mentor, Al-Mualim, Malik comes in with the Apple of Eden. But he has also been followed back. Altair redeems himself partially by helping hold off the attack on Masyaf, but he is demoted and is ordered to kill 9 men to get his previous ranking back. You are first sent to Damascus, the capital of Syria, the oldest capital in the world, and to some, the holiest city in the world. You must find an arms dealer that you discover is selling weapons on both sides. After your investigation, you must return to the assassin's headquarters in the city to get permission to pursue your target, Tamir. After successfully killing his target, Tamir tells Altair that he is only doing what he is told to do. Altair puts this in the back of his mind, as he must return to Masyaf to tell Al-Mualim what he has learned. Once hearing about your success, Al-Mualim gives you one of your rankings back and a new piece of equipment. He also gives you your next target, Garnier de Nablus, leader of the Knights Hospitalier. That means you must go to Acre, a city in northern Israel on the coast of the Levantine Sea. It is here that you learn that Garnier is performing experiments on citizens that he has kidnapped. You also learn where he is performing them, and also stories of how these experiments change these people permanently. One day they are fine, and the next day they can't stop them from screaming. You are given permission to kill Garnier, but as soon as Altair lays him to rest, he talks of how he was saving them and preparing them for the future, similar to how Tamir talked as he died. Altair shoves this in the back of his mind as he returns to Masyaf. Al-Mualim returns another rank and piece of equipment. As his next target, a man named Talal, a slaver. He is somewhere in Jerusalem, a city in West Asia on a plateau in the Judean mountains between the Mediterranean Sea and the Deep Sea. One of the oldest cities in the world, and a city that has importance to all 3 Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. While here, Altair learns where Talal is hiding, and his slaves are kidnapped citizens of Jerusalem. After getting permission to kill Talal, when you arrive at Talal's warehouse, you discover that he and his men are waiting for you. Once Talal is dead, he says the same thing as the men before him, leading Altair to believe that there is connection between the men that Al-Mualim will not tell him. But once back at Masyaf, a rank and a piece of equipment is restored, and you are given another target, Abdul Naqad, the wealthiest man in Damascus. This continues for all of the targets. After you kill one, you go back to Masyaf, so let's go through this quickly. William V, Marquis of Montferrat, abusive regent. Majid ad-Din, a tyrant in Jerusalem, holding public executions to induce more fear. Master Simbrand, leader of the Knights Teutonic, that has become paranoid and plans to betray the Crusaders by blocking the ports of Acre. Jubar al-Hakim, a scholar that is using his position to destroy written knowledge in Damascus. After killing these targets, Altair gains back his ranking and gear, but also becomes more humble and better understands the creed that he lives. Al-Mualim eventually reveals what connected all of these men, the apple that they had all conspired to get. It is a long-forgotten relic to an ancient civilization that had godlike powers. During Altair's assassination of Robert de Sable, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, he has been taking advantage of the crusade to push the Order's goal. Altair is tricked by Maria Thorpe, a Templar. She reveals that Robert expected him to try and assassinate him. She also reveals that he has gone to negotiate an alliance between the Crusaders and the Sacrans. Altair chooses to spare Maria's life since she is not his target. He goes to confront Robert in King Richard's camp to expose Robert's crime. Not sure who to believe, Richard suggests a duel, believing that God will decide who is right. Altair eventually mortally wounds Robert, where he tells Altair that he has one more person in his conspiracy, Al-Mualim. He betrayed both the assassins and the Templars to gain the apple. Altair returns to Masyaf. Upon his arrival, he sees that Al-Mualim has used the apple to enslave the local population. Al-Mualim plans to end the crusade using force to get what he wants. With the help of Malik and a few brothers who weren't affected by the apple, Altair is able to get to the gardens to confront Al-Mualim. Resisting the apple's power, Altair is able to kill Al-Mualim. He then tries to destroy the artifact, but can't. It unlocks a map showing him dozens of other pieces of Eden all over the world. In the story that takes place in the modern times, not much happens. There are some interesting emails that you can read if you know how to get to them, but other than that, the assassins do try to save Miles once, but that gets snuffed out. Vidic reveals that Abstergo is the modern-day Templars, and that nothing is ever discovered. It's a gift from the gods, the ones that came before us, and that they are seeking the remaining pieces of Eden. Once Desmond is no longer useful, Vidic is told to kill him, but Lucy holds it off, saying that they may need more information from him later. It is never said, but it is heavily implied that Lucy is an assassin mole. Once Desmond is left alone in his room, he discovers strange drawings and writings describing an upcoming event. Then, credits. Like, I gotta be real, as an adult, the story feels very forced. Like, it could have just been a medieval assassination game. With each sequel, you could definitely find a way to connect them without the animus. The mission structure is repeated all the time, and that drags the story down, because you do the same missions in every city before every assassination. That will actually help us get into the gameplay section of the review. I don't know where to begin because nothing is terrible. It just needs to be fleshed out more. And in later games it was. But in this one you do the same missions all the time. That's not a joke. They only have like 5 different missions before the assassination. They are the same side missions like saving citizens that will help you get away from guards or help you get into certain areas when you save scholars. You also have flags to collect. And believe me, there are hundreds of flags in this game. Hundreds. The game also used what is called the puppeteering control system. A and X controls your feet, B circle controls your empty hand, X square controls your weapon hand, and then Y triangle controls your head. And then you have right trigger R2 that switches between socially acceptable actions and action-oriented moves. Something that the last Assassin's Creed game to use that control scheme was Syndicate, that was released in 2015. But the mechanic that even Nintendo has copied from this game is the viewpoint system. There are a lot of games that have copied this system the exact same way that it works in Assassin's Creed series. Now, this first game set the groundwork for the series, but this game is very repetitive. So if you don't like the mission structure, it never changes in this game. All of the assassinations have the same investigation. You can pickpocket info, eavesdrop, intimidate, or get info from other assassins by killing targets or collecting flags. Then you go to the bureau and you do the assassination. The only one that is different is Robert and Al-Mualim. All the other ones are the same. The investigation in Robert is the same as the ones before it, but the assassination is different. And going to the fight with Al-Mualim and Masyaf is kind of interesting, especially because he's using the Apple of Eden in the fight. But it's not hard. The gameplay showed that the game needs to be worked on and they need to change the mission structure in the future because they sequel bait hard in this game. I really enjoyed this game when it came out, and I do think that it set the groundwork for the entire franchise to build on. There are elements in this game that are in all of the Assassin's Creed games to this day, and this game was positively received. There are a few places that gave it a 9 out of 10. I think that might be too high, but the biggest complaint that I have now are about the boring story and how repetitive the game is. This is a great way to kick off a franchise with an idea that caught a lot of people's attention. One of the best things in the recreation of these ancient cities is giving people the ability to explore these cities in that time period. I think once you sit down, time is starting to show its age in this game, and that drops the score a little bit. The visuals are still great, but the boring story and repetitive gameplay, I think I'd have to give this game a 6.5 out of 10. Back in the day, I may have given it a 7 or an 8, but now the mission structure is what pulls down the game most in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. I would like to thank all of the people for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. Tell me what you think about the first game in the Assassin's Creed series in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you can also like the video, subscribe to my channel, and you can also hit the little bell for notifications. And I will see you all next time.